As we've just seen from Patti, people communicate in many different ways when they're speaking, either on the phone or in person. It's all about the tone of voice. When you make a statement, it can be a question, it can show anger or emotion, or it can be used to quote someone else. You can do this by changing the tone of your voice to suit. When you write, however, you have to use marks or symbols to show the reader what you mean. These marks are called punctuation marks. Let's look at Nala's phone call to Patti to see how we can change the meaning of statements just by adding punctuation marks.
Hi Patti, how are you? It's Helen here in Nala.
Oh, how are you doing? How are things?
Have I got you at a bad time, Patti?
You'll notice that when you ask questions, the tone of your voice goes up at the end of the sentence. This is how we know that someone has asked a question.
Have you any other questions on the workbook?
Similarly, when we write questions, we use a question mark at the end of the sentence. Let's look at how to draw one. If you were writing Helen's sentence as a question, you'd use a question mark at the end instead of a full stop. But if, like Helen, you want to show some emotion, whether it's anger or happiness or surprise, you'd use an exclamation mark. An exclamation mark is a line with a dot at the end, like this. Like question marks, you use an exclamation mark at the end of a sentence instead of a full stop. Let's see an example. Helen says,
You've worked really hard, Patti.
If you want to write this, you'd use an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence. Other marks we use in punctuation are called speech marks or quotation marks. They look like this. You use speech marks to write out or quote exactly what a person has said. Speech marks are made by drawing two small lines to begin and end the sentence. In books and newspapers, you'll see speech marks to show when someone's being quoted directly on what they've said. Let's look at an example.
Lovely hearing from you.
If you wanted to write this, you'd put speech marks around the words that Patti actually said, which are lovely hearing from you.
I'm here in the call centre where all your calls come in, and as you've seen, people call in with a wide range of questions. Helen is one of the tutors here. Helen, tell me, what kind of problems do people ring in with?
People ring in a lot of the time with spelling as a major issue for them, and we would talk them through that and obviously send them out the workbook if that's what they need. We also have a lot of interesting queries from people who are okay at reading, but they would feel their writing would be particularly poor.
Do they find the workbook useful?
They do. The workbook is one of the most positive things in the whole programme. They obviously watch the programme and enjoy it, but the workbook is extremely important for them to practice the exercises after they've tuned in to read right now.
And from your point of view, because it seems very busy here, is there any follow-up? Do you ever call back?
Yes, well, we've had 4,000 learners ring us so far in the last 5 weeks, and all those learners will be asked if they'd like a phone call back, and we ring them back every week or 2 weeks if they'd like that, to go through the learning in both the TV series and in the workbook. And so far that's been very successful, and learners really enjoy getting a phone call from tutors to see how their learning is and to help them with any questions.
Thanks, Helen.
Okay.
Well, it's obvious that people call in with a huge variety of questions, and it's not just about improving your home or personal life. It's about being able to get a better career too, as this week's learner Patti knows.
Looking back on my life now, I wouldn't change it for the world, but it probably would have been a better life if I had more education. You know, in my career I was offered positions with photographers in America and France and Germany and in England, and again the same thing. One thing that held me back from taking up these positions, and they were good positions, but was, you know, the read, write, you know, and spelling. I know for a fact without those I would never make it today in the same situation. I was very conscious of my education. When these opportunities came up, I would have been probably in around about the 20s mark, when I would have been, you know, coming up in the field of photography. And, you know, I'd have loved to have tried, but I was nervous of moving out of my surroundings and the people that helped me and the people that sheltered me. I wouldn't have that protection, if I needed to ask someone how to spell something or what the meaning of that word. I wouldn't have that out there, so I just shied off and, settled for what I had. Oh, well, my spelling skills I've got, I won't say, I say much better, because the read and write program made me think. It made me much more aware, even though I was aware of people that could not read or write. There's thousands of people out there like me, I really regard myself as being very lucky. I'm only sorry, that program wasn't around, 20 years ago, because to me that's the way to go back to school, to go back to learning to read and write, to spell, and in doing that you would gain more confidence, and there's loads of opportunities out there for people that can do that, I met so many people that can't even write their own name, and to me they're missing out, an awful lot in life.
Paddy's got an interesting collection of items in his garage. Earlier, he showed us 2 printing plates he'd bought. When we describe more than one of something, we need to use a plural. So the word plates is a plural. The opposite of plural is a singular, as in plate. Let's see what else Patti has in his shed. You can see 1 doll, 1 cup, 1 box, and 1 musical statue. The words doll, cup, box, and statue are singular nouns. If you look around the shed, you can see that Patti has more than one of some items. For example, there are 4 crutches hanging from the roof, 3 tennis rackets hanging on the wall, and 2 statues on the shelf. The words crutches, rackets, and statues are plural forms of nouns. You'll notice that to make a plural, sometimes we can just add an S. So you can change statue to statues and racket to rackets. But sometimes spelling plurals can be a bit tricky. For example, you add ES to get the plural for words that end in CH, SH and X. So the word crutch becomes crutches and box becomes boxes. Sometimes you can discover when to add ES to the end of these words by listening, because ES creates another syllable or beat at the end of the word. So crutch has 1 beat or syllable, while crutches has 2 syllables. Knowing the end of some words will help you to figure out the endings of their plural forms.
Today we looked at how making one simple call can be the start of a whole new life.
Read, write, spelling and arithmetic is really your key to the world. You can open many doors with that, but you certainly can't open any doors without it.
And something else that Patti knows all about is taking photographs for tourist magazines. And that was something that we looked at earlier in the programme, how to read holiday brochures.
This week we looked at holiday brochures and the type of information you find in them. There's a lot of information in these brochures, so getting to know how they're organised and what information is under different headings will help you to find out what you want very quickly.
And we looked at how to use question marks, speech marks and exclamation marks, as well as use plurals.
Remember, when we're speaking, our tone may change the meaning of the sentence in many ways. Using question marks, exclamation marks and speech marks helps us to show this in writing. We also looked at plurals, which are used to describe more than one of an item. The plural form of many nouns is formed by adding an S to the end, while words that end in SH, CH and X take an ES at the end.
So don't stop. Pick up the phone and call us now. Our number is 1800 20 20 65. Remember, you can practice everything we've covered in today's programme and a lot more if you get yourself a copy of the free Read Right Now workbook. That number again, 1800 20 20 65. Remember, it's a free phone number and our tutors are standing by to take your calls right now. Next week, we'll be looking at the different ways we learn, along with using word endings, a thesaurus, and something called doublets. Tell you more about that next week. Until then, goodbye.